Hi everyone, this is Dennis and welcome to our day 2 for the algebra review camp. So today we'll still be working on the pre-algebra questions. However, we are talking about the distributive law or the distributive property. And this one is widely used in all of the algebra courses and even in some other high-end mathematics class, right? So this one is the most fundamental properties we have in terms of the calculation. So let's see what is this about. So the concept here is easy, right? So we basically just have one definition for the distributive law. That is saying that if we have a multiplied by a parenthesis b plus 3, then the result will be a times b plus a times c. Okay, so just to write it out, we have the a multiplied by b plus c, and then we have to distribute this a inside the parentheses. So we first do the a times b, and then we plus the a times c. Okay, now what if inside the parentheses we have a subtraction instead of the addition? So we can still just use the same method, right? So again, we have to distribute the a inside the parentheses. So we got the a times b minus a times c. Okay, so here the only difference is that the sign here changed from addition to subtraction based on the sign inside the parentheses. Okay, and then we do have one more thing to be careful. That is, what if we have a minus sign in front of the parentheses? Okay, so that is also the most common mistakes I have seen students making, right? So if we have a minus sign in front of these parentheses like this, again, we have to distribute that inside the parentheses. So remember, it's just like the a here is our minus 1. So the a here is our -1, and then we have the b plus c, right? And just based on this property, we have to distribute the -1 inside the parentheses like this. Okay, so we have a -1 multiplied by b plus a -1 times c, and then the result will be -b, and then we have a minus c. Okay, so we see that if we have a negative sign in front, we also need to distribute the negative sign inside the parentheses. And then just all the terms inside these parentheses will just be the opposite of these terms. Okay, so this is just the basic idea of the distributive law. And now let's see how we can use them to do some of these practice. So for the first one here, we have a subtraction with the fractions inside the parentheses, and then multiply this by an integer. Of course, we don't have to use the distributive law, right? We can just do the calculation with these two fractions, and then we just multiply this result by the 48. However, if we want to use the distributive property, the whole process is actually a lot more easier than if we want to do the first solve the fractions. So we can just use the distributive property, and then we have a 48 multiplied by 5/6 minus a 48 multiplied by 3/8. Okay, so the first step is just to distribute this 48 inside the parentheses. And then let's do some cancel out. So now we have a 48 divided by 6, that equals to 8. And then we have the 48 divided by 8, that equals to 6. So after we cancel out these denominators, what is the result? So the result becomes, first we have the 8 times 5, that equals to 40. And then we have the 6 times the 3, so we have a minus 18. Okay, so the final result here will just be 22. All right, so we see that using the distributive property, we don't have to worry about the calculation with the fractions. And that includes finding the common denominator and then do the calculations with the numerators. So we don't have to do that if we want to use the distributive property. Okay, now for the second question here, we see that we actually didn't have a format for the distributive property, right? However, since we have an equation for the distributive property, we can actually go the reverse way. That is saying that we can go from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. So imagine we first have a times b plus a times c. Okay, so in these two terms, they both contain an a. That means we can try to factor out this a and then just use the parentheses to include this b and c. Okay, so we see that it's just the reverse way of doing the distributive law. And in this case, it's actually super helpful. Okay, so here we see that in these two terms, they both have a 19. Okay, so we can try to factor out this number. And then inside the parentheses, we just have a minus 131 and then minus a negative 31. Okay, so just factor out this 19 from these two terms. And then don't forget, we still need to keep the sign of these numbers as well as their operation, because we have a subtraction. That means inside the parentheses, we still have a subtraction. And now we have a 19 multiplied by a negative 131. And remember from yesterday, when we try to subtract a number, we are trying to add the opposite. So here we want to add the 31. And of course, a 19 multiplied by a minus 100, because when we try to add two numbers, the sign will follow from the one with the greater absolute values. And in this case, it should be a negative. And then multiply this by a negative number. We know the sign should be a negative. And then multiply a number by 100. We just need to add two zeros in the end. Okay. So we see that using the distributive law, the questions become much more easier, right? Okay, so these will be the answers to these two questions. And now for the rest of problems, it will be your time to try to do this one on your own, okay? And don't forget to upload your answers once you are done. Okay, so thank you guys for joining us, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Okay, thank you.